Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the PG Show, where we talk about all things college football. And today I want to talk and break down the Pac 12 and the over under for the total of the wins there. But before we do that, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me know what you guys are thinking down in the comments below. All right, everybody. So today I've got Shotgun Spratling on with us today to go over the over-under for the Pac-12 win totals. How are you doing today?
Hanging in there.
All right. What's your guys' temperature out there? Because here in Oklahoma, it's like 105 degrees, so we're out here dying.
I mean, I'm actually on the East Coast right now, so I've been a part of this heat wave. It's plus 90s with the humidity, which I'm from Georgia originally, but having lived in LA for 12 years, I got used to not having the humidity all the time. It was great. Now I'm back on the East Coast and not enjoying the swampiness of 5 minutes after you walk outside and having that nice sheen on your skin. So I'm not really appreciative of that. I'm ready for some nice dry heat. The dry heat's much better in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I guess we've had a little mixture of the dry heat with the humidity lately. So, the thunder's actually rolling outside. So maybe that means we're gonna get some rain. But then that just means it's gonna be hot for like the next week after that. So, but yeah. Well, before we go ahead and get started, just tell everybody where they can find you at, and maybe a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so I write for USCFootball.com as well as D1Baseball.com. I cover the West Coast for D1 Baseball, and as well as the Northeast, kind of a coast to coast thing. But then for USCFootball.com, which is on the 24/7 Sports Network, I cover recruiting, cover football, basketball, a little bit of everything there. So obviously, your Oklahoma fans will have special interest because every Oklahoma fan has taken special interest in USC for some unknown reason this offseason, strangely. But been covering at USCFootball.com for a number of years now. I've been covering on the USC beat for a good most of the last decade. So you can find me on Twitter at Shotgun SPR. If you're interested in college baseball, you can find me at Shotgun SPR D1. And then I'm also on Instagram, Shotgun Spratling. So you can check out the photos. I'm usually on either courtside or on the sidelines shooting photos during games as well, kind of getting a different perspective as well as doing interviews and everything else after the games.
Yeah, I wouldn't know anything about why OU fans would be so interested in LA football, but yeah, that's definitely going to be interesting. We're excited to see just if Lincoln Riley can do any better for you guys than what he did here at OU. So, you said you covered baseball, so I want to ask you this question because this has been really interesting. So, with the introduction of NIL, right, we see a lot of baseball players actually making more money than what they're making now in college and what they could be in the MLB. What do you think the impact of NIL is going to have on baseball, but also just all all college sports?
Well, it's interesting because baseball just has a different, dynamic because you go into the minor leagues, you do, a lot of guys do get signing bonuses if you're, a big time prospect, but those signing bonuses go pretty quickly. It's only the top, basically 2 rounds, a little bit in the second round that's, seven figures. So after that, if you're a top 10 round pick, you're usually getting 125,000 to $1 million, somewhere in there, the third to the 10th round. And that's good money, but you are then going into a process of 3 to 5 to 7 to 9 years, depending on how long it takes you to go through the minors, where you are not getting paid a living wage, to be honest. And even though Rob Manfred wants to say that it is, so that has made it for guys that maybe are fringe prospects, maybe they would be drafted but wouldn't get a big signing bonus, to say, hey, maybe I want to go back to school, finish out and finish things off, and I can make a little bit of money here. And then if I'm not getting a big signing bonus this year and I can come back, if I have a year of eligibility left, then maybe I'll come back, make a little NIL money, and then take my chances at the pro level in the minor league. So it's adding a different dynamic there, and which is interesting. And I'm all for guys, to make some money, especially if you try to make it into the minor leagues and you don't make it. That's a lot of time that you have spent where you are just not making the income that a lot of your peers are making in any other profession. So, I think it's an interesting dynamic that adds to it. And we're seeing an influx of players basically traveling from the West towards the East, actually, players going from mid majors to SEC schools, a lot of stuff like that. And part of the reason is one of the reasons is they can get some NIL money there. So some big time players that maybe not. There's some other players that aren't big time prospects but are really good college players that can big help bolster the winning of a program, and they're making that move as well. So you have some players. Oklahoma obviously having Cade Horton, and that was a big question for Cade Horton is, hey, do you come back to Oklahoma and, hey, you're going to get some NIL opportunities off of this run that you're putting together, but maybe you're a second or third round pick, and then you put a couple of more starts together, and it would be interesting if he did not, if Oklahoma doesn't go on the run that they go on and make it to Omaha, if he only gets one start in a postseason, does he get the same opportunity when the draft comes up in July this year and moves his way all the way up the first round into the top 10? And obviously he's going to get paid a ton of money there. I think he signed, I think it was 3, 4, 5 million. I can't remember, somewhere in there, but obviously he's not going to be coming back to Oklahoma after he gets that type of bonus.
Nope. And I think there's four people. There's four types of people that win right now with NIL. It's the NFL or any major league sport. You have the fans, the NCAA, and the players. And it's all different aspects because now players can live in college and not have to go to the major leagues or try to make it to the major leagues maybe before they're ready to go support a family or themselves. And so now they can sit in college, maybe wait a little bit longer, doesn't matter what sport you're in, and develop and get better. And then ultimately turns out a better product for those pro sports because they're getting a more tenured player at that point. So it's going to be exciting. I'm excited to see where NIL is going to take a lot of these players.
I mean, the conflation of NIL plus the transfer portal plus the conference realignment. I mean, the NCAA and college athletics is changing in front of our eyes right now. And the last 5 years and the next 5 years is going to be dramatically different than it was, a decade ago. So it's very interesting. It's very intriguing to see all the changes and how things have gone. And you're going to see that. I think eventually you're going to see the coaches' salaries start coming back down a little bit too, because if your boosters aren't paying for as much money into the program because they're wanting to help out that collective or help out with NIL, then suddenly there's not as much cash flow going around for the coaches or the facilities. So I think you'll see some of those things start to come back a little bit, whereas the players get a little bit more money in their own pockets rather than just the nice things around campus. So I think it's an interesting time right now just to see the change and the development of college athletics and where it's going to go, because will the NCAA even be around in a few years? That's a big question too. Is college football going to go to a completely different dynamic, going forward? So there's so much that's going on right now, and hey, college athletics has been changing and evolving throughout the history of the NCAA, but it seems like we're at a time where there's a lot of big changes happening in a short span, and it's making it very interesting and very fun to cover because you never know what's right around the corner.
Yep, it's true. Well, let's go ahead and let's get into what everybody's here to talk about, or what everybody's here to listen. The over-under betting lines for the Pac-12. And I think this one is wildly interesting this year with the addition of USC to y'all's conference. So let's go ahead and let's start out with the Arizona Wildcats. And I think you saw it in that document I sent over to you earlier, but I had a question in there. Who's the worst team in Division I football? Is it Kansas, Vandy, or Arizona? Or I guess I should say amongst Power 5 schools.
Well, that would be a good question. Last year, I think Arizona is going to be much improved. Now, I don't know if their win total goes very far. I do think that they're going to get I'm going to pick the over here. I think they're going to get past 2.5 wins. But you look at the schedule and you go, where exactly does that come from? I think they're going to be much better because Jed Fish has infused that program with energy the last couple of years, but they were really bad last year. And yet in his first year, they were able to still bring in a really good recruiting class, and including T-Mac, one of my favorite players from the high school class this past year, Tetroya McMillan, a wide receiver from Anaheim Servite. he is a dude. He's a baller. He's a guy that you can put on the volleyball court and he will dominate everybody as well. So, a multi-sport athlete. Saw him at the opening last year and he was just a phenomenal, he just mosses people all the time. I think if he's healthy and they find a way to use him correctly, I think he's worth a win by himself. I think he's that good of a player compared to what they have on that roster. And so they're going to be trying to find different ways to get him the ball. And I think they'll get over the 2.5. North Dakota State is going to be tough for them. That's a tough non-conference game because that's kind of comparative as far as the talent levels, I think, even if it is an FCS school. But I think they get a win there. I think they get a win at Colorado. And then somewhere along the line, I think they find a win between Washington State, Cal, and San Diego State. So I think they'll get over the 2.5 wins there.
Yeah, I love how you're a little bit more optimistic. I don't see, I don't see 3 wins here for them. They might get 2, but man, that out of conference schedule does not do them any favors.
Well, the thing is, when Jed Fish took over the program, it was just absolutely barren of talent. They did not have any talent on the roster, and he has done a really good job both in the transfer portal last year, getting some kids to come back to Arizona, getting some players from programs like Wisconsin to come back, that weren't happy with their situation. Getting those type of players that were 4-star guys coming out of high school, that's it, added some talent. And then they had a really good freshman class coming in this season led by T-Mac. So I think that's going to help push them. And they've built a really good culture because you saw at the end of the year, even though they were absolutely terrible, they were still fighting. You could look at the USC team last year that went 4-8. They were absolutely terrible, and they were not still fighting at the end of the year. So I think that's a big difference. If he has that buy-in, they know he's going to be there. So it's going into his second year. I think you're going to see some improvement. So that's why I got them finding a way to get over.
Yeah, and I guess it is important to note Arizona did cover quite a few of their games last year, so maybe that sheds some hope. I will say, it shocks me that Arizona and Arizona State are not better than what they are year in and year out with the recruiting pipeline that they have being in the state of Arizona.
Yeah, the state of Arizona has really developed a lot more talent in the last 5 years. I would say, maybe even 10 years. And Arizona's been good in the past. They had the Desert Swarm defense that had Teddy Bruschi and those guys. Arizona State has been good at times. Dennis Erickson took them to, I think, an Orange Bowl or a Rose Bowl. So there's been times where those programs have been good, but it is kind of fascinating that there's not more consistency there. I think part of it is you're playing USC, UCLA every year, and there's just a better. Even though Arizona has talent, it's not the same talent as Southern California. But you would expect them to have a little bit more consistency, and really surprise at Arizona State what they've done the last 2 years. Obviously, all the turmoil that they've gone through has added to it. But I was not big on the Herm Edwards hire when it was first happened, and I was surprised that they had done okay the first couple of years, and expected last year, with Jaden Daniels coming back and, a big-time talented quarterback I covered in high school, expected them with some pieces that they had to really take that next step. And then everything happened off the field, and they just haven't been the same. And, they lost a ton of pieces over this offseason. And I think Arizona has a chance to beat Arizona State at the end of the year because I think Arizona is only going to continue to get better as the season progresses, especially with a lot of those young players that they got coming in as they get more playing time. So when they play in that final game of the season at the very end, the Territorial Cup, I think Arizona has a great chance to to win that game, to at least be in that game and to potentially win that game, because I just don't know what you're going to get from this Arizona State squad. Like I said, lost a ton of talent. Their head coach is, potentially with his head on the chopping block. Everything has kind of gone on off the field. How do they respond to that when there's that black cloud hovering over them? And they didn't do really well last year when it was there to begin with. So I don't think that you're going to see Arizona State really take a big jump forward from what they were doing last season.
Yeah, and let's just go ahead and pivot into Arizona State since we're talking about them. Their over under totals 5.5. Last year they went 8-5 and lost to Wisconsin in the Vegas Bowl. But I mean, their schedule's not doing them any favors either. They're going to get those wins against Northern Arizona and Eastern Michigan, but man, you got to go to Stillwater. You got to play Utah at home. You got to go to LA to play USC. I believe you're going to play a Washington team that's actually going to be improving. Like, I think there's a good chance Herm Edwards, like after, they're sitting at 2-3, they give them the can and then their season goes down the hole because, well, you're turning over a head coach in the middle of the season.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. We've seen a lot more where coaches get fired early in the season. You saw that last year with USC, and USC, part of their reason was they thought they had enough talent that a jolt of energy might change things. Well, at Arizona State, I don't think that that's going to be the case. There's the NCAA investigation is still going on. How are they going to deal with it? They lost their defense coordinator Antonio Pierce. He resigned because of that investigation. They've got to, the transfers that came into the program have to play at an elite level, and that starts with Emory Jones at the quarterback position. And I'm just not super high on the players that they brought in. I'm not super high on the talent they have on the roster. And the players they lost coming off, they lost a ton of receivers off the group. They've got nobody proven at the receiver position. I just don't see where it's at. I think the over under is 5.5 here. I've got them under here. It's going to be close there, and this is why Vegas is so good, because it's going to be right at that line. Obviously, they're going to beat Northern Arizona. They're going to beat Eastern Michigan. Then where does it go from there? Can they get a couple wins against can they win at Colorado? I think they should be able to win there, and I don't think Colorado's going to be very good. But after that, where do the wins come? Can they beat Arizona at the end of the season? Can they beat UCLA? Can they beat Stanford? Potentially. Can they beat Washington State? They didn't last year, so it makes it hard for me to believe that they're going to suddenly be much better this season. So I got them going under as well.
All right, let's go ahead and let's pivot into the Colorado Buffaloes, a previous Big 12 team. Looks like they're not doing much better in the Pac-12 than they were in the Big 12. So, they've got a brutal out-of-conference schedule as well. They're playing TCU with the new head coach, Sonny Dykes. I think that's a loss. You got to go at Air Force, which is never a tough win, or never a tough or easy win. And then you got to go to Minnesota. And then not to mention, you've got Oregon at USC, Utah. I mean, their over-under is 3.5. I mean,
yeah, I don't see it. I mean, you would expect, if they're prepared, they could beat Air Force. It's just stopping the option. But that's always difficult. You would like for that game to be the opener if you're scheduling that for Colorado, just because, hey, you can prepare for that throughout fall camp and have it set up. When you're doing it on a turnaround, now they'll have an extra day because they play on Friday against TCU, but that turnaround is not fun to turn to an option team like Air Force is and try to be prepared for that. Yeah, I don't see where Colorado's getting their wins at. I don't know how many wins they'll get this season at all. I know they're not getting a 3.5. I just have no confidence in this team to be able to do it. They haven't been very good. Last year their offensive line was supposed to be the strength of their team, and they were atrocious. USC took two of their better players in the transfer portal, and Brendan Rice, Jerry Rice's son, and Mekhi Blackman, one of their top cornerbacks. So I just don't know where they're getting any wins, to be honest. I look at their schedule and say they might be winless this season. I don't have any confidence in them to win any game this season. There's no game that I would bet on them to be the winning team. So, I definitely am going under the 3.5. I know that they'll probably get a couple wins somehow, but I have no confidence they'll get anywhere close to a 4-win total.
Yeah, which is so sad because Boulder, Colorado is such a beautiful place to play. It would be great if Colorado was a great team, but it doesn't seem like they can ever put it together.
One of my biggest disappointments is that the two times that I've gone to Boulder, neither time has Ralphie run. I have not been able to see Ralphie run yet, so I've been very disappointed. There was sprinkles on the field one game, and then I don't remember what the reason was the second time, but there's twice that I've gone up to Boulder, excited to see Ralphie run, and then been disappointed.
All right, well, let's move into the Oregon Ducks, and I think this is probably the most interesting team outside of USC in the Pac-12 this year because of this first game right here. And I tweeted it out earlier, and I said, please tell me I'm crazy to think that Oregon can go all the way and beat Georgia on ABC with Bo Nix at quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's crazy. I mean, Bo Nix wasn't beating Georgia at Auburn, so I don't think he's going to come in and suddenly have the Midas touch and be able to lead them. But the interesting thing is, how does Georgia play against their former defensive coordinator? Obviously, Dan Lanning knows all the ins and outs of the offense on the other side. So can Oregon turn it into a, basically a low scoring ground and pound game, and then maybe they have an opportunity. But I think that Georgia's talent will win out and they'll be able to win that game. But I think that Oregon is going to be a team that is going to continue to get better as the season progresses as well. So I think they're a team that can get to their win total here and potentially be really good at the end of the season if Bo Nix can take a couple of steps. Everybody's been waiting on him. He always shows those flashes. He throws, makes some on the run plays, and you go, wow, that's special. And then he makes some bonehead throws, and you're like, what are you doing out there? So, that's going to be the key to this season for Oregon, in my opinion, is how far Bo Nix can take them. Can he take another step in his development to where he just doesn't turn the ball over as much? That's been the biggest issue there, is just the amount of turnovers that he has every season.
Yeah, but I think we're kind of running under the assumption that Bo Nix is going to win that quarterback battle over Ty Thompson, right?
Yeah, I think Bo Nix will win the battle, which is why it's so important for him to take care of the ball, because he's going to be the guy there, and because there is a battle, does he get off to a good start, or does Dan Lanning pull the plug early and say, hey, Ty Thompson's the quarterback of the future, let me get him in there, and suddenly you have a quarterback controversy and that throws everything. They should have a pretty good defense. They got some elite dudes in the middle with Noah Sewell, with defensive tackle Brendan Dorius, and then they have Justin Flo, who's the best linebacker I've ever seen in high school, who just has been injured for the last 2 years, so he hasn't got a chance to get out there. If they can get him and Noah Sewell combined together on the field at the same time, that is a scary duo in the middle of the field, in the middle of a defense. And I think Dan Lanning knows how to use some freak defenders from what we saw last year with Georgia. So, I think their defense is going to be really good and give them a chance in every game. But what does Bo Nix, what do they get from the quarterback position? That'll be the big question mark for them.
Yeah, I've got Oregon at 8 wins. I think that Georgia game, obviously it's a loss, but I think they, after what they did to Ohio State last year, I can't put anything past them. But that BYU game's tough. And then Utah is going to be tough. So, I think that UCLA game's the toss-up. Can they win against UCLA and get to 9 wins?
I mean, they're playing at home against UCLA. They're playing at home against BYU, I believe. So I think that definitely helps. The Autzen Stadium, environment is definitely going to help push them a little bit. And that they got Utah at home as well. Even though I still think Utah wins that game, I think the season might come down to for them is the Oregon State game. Because I think Oregon State's has been playing really well the last couple of years, and is going to make it a really challenging environment for Oregon. So they're going to want to beat their rivals. So I think that's a game that it could be a swing game for them as far if they can get it on the top of that over under win total.
Yeah, so let's talk about Oregon State. They're currently at 5.5, and last year they went 7-6, lost to Utah State. And how did Jimmy Kimmel get his own bowl game? But the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl, and I think they've got a pretty favorable schedule, especially out of conference. I mean, Fresno State's not going to be easy, but they should win that game. I think Boise State's tough. You got USC at home. You got to go at Utah. But in reality, they should have a pretty favorable schedule this year.
I mean, the non-conference, you look at it and you say, if you look at each individual game, you say, yeah, they should win each game. But when I look at those 3 games together, Boise State, at Fresno, and Montana State, you go, are they going to lose one of these? It feels like that's the type of a slate where they would lose one of these games normally. Now, I think Jonathan Smith has done a really good job at Oregon State, and I think they're continuing to rise. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and think that they will get that. The rest of the schedule, that's where it comes in interesting to me. I don't think they're going to beat USC, even though that's at home. I think USC is going to want some revenge from last year, where Oregon State kind of ran all over them. Now, can USC stop the run? That'll be a big question. If they can't, then it'll be a repeat of last season. But I think that you look at the schedule. I think they beat Stanford. I think they'll beat Washington. I don't think Washington's going to be as good as some other people are thinking. So I think they easily get over that 5.5 if they can take care of that non-conference slate, because they got Colorado, they got California at home. So those 2 games should be wins as well. I think they get over the 5.5.
Yeah, I think I've got them at 6, going 3-0, and then they play USC, Utah, Stanford. I got them in Washington State. I've got them losing all 4 of those games, and then beating Washington, Cal, and Colorado. So I
They've
think Oregon State can put it together this year.
they've
Go
got one
Vols.
of the best offensive line coaches in the country. He develops guys every single year, so they're going to run the ball. I think they got to replace their running back from last year, who was really tough. But they've been able to find a stable of guys that are a little bit overlooked coming out of high school and just run with that chip on their shoulder, and they don't put too much pressure on the quarterback. And then you can go play action, and once they get the play action going, now those tight ends get involved. And Oregon State was really good at that at times last year, but they got to find a little bit more consistency there. And if they do, I think they could be a sneaky good team this season.
All right, let's go ahead and make our shift into Stanford. And I know y'all are seeing that American Express on the side. I am not sponsored by American Express, so I want to put that disclaimer out there. All right, American Express. Stanford, they are currently set at 4.5 wins. Last year, they went 3-9, and this one really intrigues me at 4.5 wins because they've got probably one of the top quarterback prospects in college football right now in Tanner McKee, and they're only favored at 4.5 wins. So that give us a little more insight to this one.
I mean, Stanford just hasn't been good recently. That outside of beating USC last year, that was like the highlight of their season in week 2. That led to the ouster of Clay Helton, but they just were not good. They haven't been the same team that they've been in the past, where they could run the ball and pound the run game, and then force you to one-on-one on the outside to go man to man and throw up those jump balls to the big wide receivers. That's what they've done so well for so long, and then play action and kill you with that. But they just don't have the dynamic players that they've had in the past. There's no Christian McCaffrey on this roster. There's not even a JJ Arcega-Whiteside at the same level. They have John Humphreys, who is a wide receiver who I've loved since seeing him in high school. He's 6'3", 6'4". He can make some of those type of catches, but they just haven't had the quality of athletes that they had in the past. And it starts up front with the offensive line. The offensive line has not been this a unit that just dominates like they did under Jim Harbaugh or early with David Shaw. And because of that, the running game hasn't gone anywhere, and the quarterbacks have been under pressure a lot. So even though they've had some quality quarterbacks, their quarterbacks, the last couple of quarterbacks are in the NFL in some capacity, and Tanner McKee could be that next guy. But if the offensive line doesn't give you any time, it doesn't matter. So I think that Stanford, I am not very high on them this season. Yeah, they'll beat Colgate. Congrats on that. You beat Colgate. What else are you going to do the rest of the season? Some people are a lot higher on them. I don't know that their defense hasn't really sold me either the last year. So I think they got some work to do to get to that 4.5. I think I got them at the under right here.
Yeah, I think I've got them under 2 with Cal and Colgate. I just don't see them beating any of these other teams here. But let's go ahead and let's shift to the USC Trojans. And let's be honest, they fired Clay Helton mid-season so that they could start trying to bring in Lincoln Riley. Because if you go back and you watch the season that Lincoln Riley put up for OU, he did not play call like he has been the past couple of years. So that's just, I know it's a little bit of conspiracy theory, and it's not conspiracy theory Thursday. So, but last year they went 4-8. Their over under this year is 9.5 wins, but they are, last time I checked, they are one of the favorites to win the college football playoff national championship this year, which I don't understand why people would put money on that. But they got a new head coach this year.
Yeah, so they're apparently the leader in they're getting the most money or something, I believe. First for the over, and then also for to win the national championship or whatever. And maybe that's because the odds are pretty low, compared. And those have risen recently because of the money that's coming in. But I don't see it. The problem with USC, and the problem that's been with USC for a few years now, is the trenches. Now, their offensive line, they bring back a number of guys, and they could have been in dire straits if they didn't get back center Brett Nealon and Andrew Voorhees, who are both. Andrew Voorhees is one of the top interior offensive linemen in the country. So they could have been even worse off. but they have no depth on the offensive line. They have 6 guys that they can trust, and then after that, it's a big grab bag. So an offensive lineman, running backs and offensive linemen always get hurt. You're always going to have an offensive lineman go down. You're always going to have a running back go down. Now, hopefully that's only for a couple weeks with a sprained ankle, but you never know. So that's going to be a big issue for USC if they have a couple injuries on the offensive line. And they've had that in the past where they get down to a fourth string center or something. They don't have the depth to be able to sustain that this season. And then on the other side, they just don't have the talent on the defensive line that they need to be a championship contender. They don't have the guys that Georgia had last year. They don't have the guys that Alabama has year in and year out. They don't even have the guys that Michigan had last year. And you saw what happened to Michigan's defense. They got run over by Georgia as well. So USC has all the pretty things. They have all the skill players this year, but they're still lacking in the trenches. So that I don't see them as a national championship contender in that way. Could they go on a run? I think that is possible. I think they could definitely go on a run towards the Pac-12 title, especially this year. The Pac-12 has eliminated the divisions. So USC, hey, they could potentially lose to Utah in the season at Utah and then play Utah again at the end of the season. So I think that is a possibility. And I think because the reason why is because you got Caleb Williams, you got Jordan Addison, you got a dynamic running back in Troy Dye that can catch the ball out of the field. You got Austin Jones and Darwin Barlow, another 2 transfer running backs that I think are really good. You got tons of wide receivers with Mario Williams coming over as well, with Caleb Williams, with Brendan Rice coming in. So there's pieces there, along with the pieces they already had at the skill positions. But there are big concerns, especially with depth, on the offensive defensive lines, and they need a guy like Corey Foreman to really step up. He was the number 1 prospect in the country in the 2020 class. He didn't have a senior season. I think that really set him back last year as he was trying to get up to speed. Didn't have that freshman season you would really expect from a number 1 overall prospect, but is he ready to take that step forward? If he is, and they can get Romello Height, who's a kid they got from Auburn, a transfer that came in from Auburn, who has been able to get a ton of pressures in his career but not get sacks. If those 2 guys take their game to the next level, now you have a pass rush and you can do a little bit more. So that fills a lot of the holes there. But I think there's some big issues at the on the lines and the depth concerns there that will keep them from being a national championship contender for sure.
Yeah, so I've got them actually at 9 wins, and I have them losing to Utah and Notre Dame, with the toss-up game being UCLA. I know it's at UCLA, but it's still kind of a home game. I mean, USC fans are going to show up for that one, and I don't know. I don't see them getting past 9 wins in the first season with Lincoln Riley. That offensive line is not great. And if Raleek Brown and Travis Dye can't put it together, we saw that last year with OU's offense. If they don't have a good running game, Lincoln's offense doesn't work right. And so Travis Dye and Raleek Brown have to be able to put it together for Lincoln Riley's passing offense to open up. And I just don't see. And for those people that are out there putting money that USC are going to win the national championship, I just have no words for you. We got to find you guys. We got to find the brains, because
if you're betting on anyone to win the national championship and it's not Ohio State, Georgia, or Alabama, maybe Clemson in the last 6, 7, 8 years, then why are you betting anyways? Like, they've been those teams. No one else has really even been in contention, and that's what it's going to continue to be until there's some changes made, whether it be the expansion of the playoff or whatever it may be. But if you put money on Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley, I would have said that was a fool's bet as well. If you put money on whoever, if you think that anybody in the ACC other than Clemson was going to make a run, it's just those 4 teams have been the only teams that actually been contenders. If you put any money on Notre Dame, I think that would have been fool's money. Now, can USC get to that level? Sure, I think they can. But it starts with, they got to get better in the trenches. They got to get those, the 5-star recruits back again, the offensive linemen and whatnot. And then we'll see what can be done there. The running game, I'm not that concerned about. USC's offensive line was one of the best graded at the end of the season last year. They don't lose too much there. They lose a couple pieces. But everyone, the 5 guys that they have returning all have experience starting. There are a couple young guys that were thrown in the mix before. So I don't think the offensive line will be a concern unless they have a couple injuries. Then it's a big concern because they just don't have the depth. But you look at Travis Dye. This is a guy that gets in the end zone. They had 18 touchdowns last year, so I'm not really concerned about him. You have Austin Jones come in as well. That's two starting running backs from other Pac-12 programs. So not only is USC bolstering their roster, but taking away talented players from other rosters in the Pac-12. I mean, that's the type of moves that you should see from the blue blood programs. That's the type of moves you should see from Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, Oklahoma, Texas. That's what you expect from the top tier programs, and that's something that USC just hasn't done in the past. Not necessarily with the transfer portal, but they haven't been able to steal those top players away in the last 5 or 10 years like they would in Pete Carroll's era and early with Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian, where they could recruit the best players and not only find really good players, but take away really good players from other teams instead of them going, guys that may grow up 5 minutes away from a school still would have come to USC. So that's the type of thing that USC has to get back to. And, they've made an investment. It's not just bringing in Lincoln Riley, it's the investment around Lincoln Riley as well. They've invested a ton of money. I mean, obviously his contract is huge, but the support staff and everything else, they've invested a lot more resources in the past, in the past 6 months than they had in the previous time. So we'll see where they go from here. But I think this year is the building year. And with Caleb Williams coming in and having 2 years where he's going to be on campus for 2 years, that's what you kind of look at this. You go in and hey, hopefully you strike gold and you can put things together really quickly and you can play and maybe get to the Pac-12 championship game and give Utah a run for their money. But I think this is the building block year, and you got to be able to build in the trenches with the recruiting class and with the transfer portal next season for 2024 or 2023, excuse me, being their potential run for a championship type of team.
Yeah, so what's the over-under for USC to get college game day there? I know they're going to at least get one, but I could see it at least 3 times. At Utah for that game, at UCLA, and then at home for Notre Dame.
I mean, I think that they'll have it for the at Utah one will happen, and then it just depends. The problem with the Notre Dame game is it comes on rivalry weekend when they play at in LA. So a lot of times, the USC recently the USC Notre Dame rivalry game just hasn't had the cachet that some of the other rivalry games have because it's late in the year. It's not, hey, teams are 5-0 and they beat up on some non-conference and hey, everyone's excited. It's you're through your schedule and hey, if a team's 8-4 and one team's 10-2, that's not going to have the cachet of another rivalry game, Auburn, Alabama, and suddenly the SEC West is on the line type of thing. So that's one of the reasons why game day hasn't been out for Notre Dame during my time at USC, as far as I can remember. They've been out for Stanford when Stanford was a top 3 team under Ed Orgeron. They were out for Oregon when Chip Kelly was going against Lane Kiffin, I believe, a game that was like 63-52 or something, some ridiculous score. But those are the 2 times I can think of off the top of my head that they've been out in the last decade. So, I can see the Utah one because Utah just brings a great environment and great atmosphere, and both teams could be undefeated at that time. But after that, we'll see if USC is carrying their weight enough for game day to be considering them.
All right, well, let's go ahead and let's move into USC's rival, UCLA. They are currently set at 8. Last year they went 8-4. And this year, really, I mean, their toughest games are at Oregon and USC at home. So for me, is this Chip Kelly's year where he needs to win all of his games except for USC and Oregon?
He was on the hot seat last year and came off the hot seat at the end. So you got a 5th-year quarterback back. You got Dorian Thompson-Robinson there. The offense should be good. They got to replace some pieces on the offensive line, though, which gives me a little bit of hesitation. They've got a really good running back in Zach Charbonnet. No one on the wide receivers that really stands out to them. But the question is going to be, is their defense? They've got a new defensive coordinator. You got Bill McGovern coming over. But can they build? They haven't really built under Chip Kelly. Even though last year they were, better, it just felt like they still did not play up to their expectation or not up to their potential at least. So the non-conference is so different this year from what they've had in the past. they hadn't won a non-conference game under Chip Kelly until last year. So, but they didn't play the non-conference schedule they have this year, which is Bowling Green, Alabama State, South Alabama. That's 3 home games, 3, money games, or you're paying payout games, or you're paying the other team to come into town. That's 3 to start off the season with. Can they go, basically 5-4 after that? That's the question. And you feel like they should be able to do that. So, can they get to 8 wins? I think so. Will they get over that? That's yeah. I'm gonna give it a push here. I'm gonna give them 8 wins, but I don't think they're gonna get over it.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see. And I mean, it seems like Lincoln Riley's always getting this, but it's going to be the Chip Kelly versus Lincoln Riley offense there in the Pac-12. So that'll be a shootout and a really fun game for USC fans. So let's go ahead and let's go into Utah here. And I realized I forgot to put their over-under up there, but it's at 8.5 as well, which I think's pretty low for the season that they had last year.
Yeah, that was a little bit surprising just to see it. I think they're easily the favorite in the Pac-12. With everything that they bring back from that team that went to the Rose Bowl last year, the experience from that, having Cam Rising back, and you wonder about last season's team. If they would have put Cam Rising as the starting quarterback to begin the season, he was the heartbeat of that team. He was a guy that got injured against USC a couple years back. So they bring in a couple of transfer quarterbacks. The guy they brought in last year, I can't remember his name, from I believe it was from Baylor, struggled out the gate, and they lost a couple games early. After that, they were really, really good because they came together around Cameron Rising with him back, with all the defensive pieces they have back. I think they're going to be really good again this season. Obviously, they got a really tough opener. They have to go across the country, play at Florida, but I think they win that game. And then I think that they have a great season. They might lose a game or two, but the over under there, I got them over easily in this one. I think they're the Pac-12 favorite. I think they'll be in the Pac-12 championship game. And who they face is more of a question than will they get to that win total there.
Yeah, I think everybody's underestimating that Utah-Florida game. Utah should pretty able to handle Florida there. Florida's not going to be any good this year, especially Billy Napier's first year and the recruiting cycle that they had and the people that transferred out. I mean, they lost Emory Jones, so yeah, they should be able to win that game. I think they're going to win 10 games this season at least 10 games. So, I mean, you can't dock them. I mean, they lost that Rose Bowl to Ohio State, and I mean, they put up a fight. If it wasn't for was it Jackson Smith and Jibba that had like 360 yards or something that game? So, yeah, everybody should be watching out for Utah. They could be a sneaky dark horse to make the college football playoffs this year. Especially
it starts with that first game. So if they get past Florida, then I think that gives them some momentum as well. You beat up on Southern Utah, play San Diego State. I think it's a team that could get on a roll pretty quickly.
Yes. So let's go ahead and let's get into Washington. And this one kind of shocks me as well at 7.5 wins. Last year they were 4-8, and they got Michigan State at home, and then they have to go to Oregon and UCLA. So I don't see 7.5. I don't know why everybody's so high on Washington, but maybe
I'm with you on that one. I don't know where they're seeing these wins come from. New head coach. There's a lot of question marks with this. Now they get Michael Penix Jr., the lefty that was at Indiana before. He has a relationship with Kalen DeBoer, the head coach. So, maybe they can reconnect. And they've got some early games that are going to be easy for them, Kent State, Portland State. But I just, I don't know what to think about this team. They just haven't played up to their potential the last couple of years, which is probably why they have a new head coach. But I don't see where those 7.5 wins are coming from. So I got the under on this one for sure.
Yeah, I think they for sure have 4 with Kent State, Portland State. I think they can get that California and Arizona, but after that, I mean, maybe Colorado. It's getting real tough. But so then they give Washington 7.5, and then they give Washington State 5.5 after they're coming off a 7-6 season with that highly touted, recruited transfer QB Cameron Ward. And they lost to Central Michigan last year by 3 points in that Tony the Tiger Bowl, which I look at that and go, okay, so they're at least competing with a Big Ten team. I know they have to go to Wisconsin, USC, and Oregon, and then they got Utah at home, but I think they should be able to get 7 wins on here. I mean, I might be wrong. Yeah, and that Arizona State game late in the season that could be really, really beneficial for him if Herm Edwards is canned by then. So, but yeah, I was surprised everybody was sleeping on Washington State. So, all right. Well, that is going to be it for our Pac 12 over under win total predictions. Thank you all for watching. Let us know what you guys think. Who do you guys think is going to be the sleeper in the Pac 12? Where do you think Utah and USC are going to land? Will one of those teams make the college football playoffs this year? And Shotgun, just tell them where they can find you at.